Okay. Good morning, everyone. We're back at it after a week's break. We're finally returning. Finally, it's been 1 week. We're finally returning to Misericorde, to Limbarrotor Abbey. Please show the game. That's the game. Brilliant. Okay. Yeah, I don't stream for a week and I completely forget how computers work. Love that for me. But I've had a bit of an absolutely mental past couple of weeks, days, years. So I'm not fully highest level energy I could be. It's probably only going to be like a 2 hour max stream today. Nice and chill. My mate Jules, who sings in Latin sometimes, could not be here today. She has a life and commitments, much as I do, but one of my commitments to myself is I like to play video games and talk over them. Everybody wish her well in applying for new jobs. And I saw when I opened up the game in stream that the soundtrack for Misericorde is now available to purchase through stream. So I'm gonna grab that, and I might use some of the music for my my videos, my stream outro. But I'm kind of a little afraid to listen to it in case I get like audio spoilers, because I really like being taken, by surprise by good video game music. And the music in this game is fantastic. I really love it. And I want to continue to be surprised when stuff happens in this game, and a new musical sting will appear along with, a plot revelation or a new character. I think we've pretty much met all the characters we could meet. It's very much sort of a locked room mystery, in the sense that the detective in the game grew up in a locked room. But I think we're good. We've got all the nuns, and we've got the current fall guy for the murder. I don't know who else we would meet. There were those two men in the like prologue. Those two kind of English nobility types who were talking about conspiracies to kill the king. What's up with them? When's that coming back? Like, what's that gonna mean? They're sitting there in the back of my mind, and I'm waiting for any sort of indication that Katherine was killed as part of some sort of conspiracy. Or my main thing is, I believe Katherine is the mastermind. She's still alive somehow. She faked her death. That's my vibe. And I want it to be true, mainly because I like all of the nuns too much. Even the ones that I don't, like I wouldn't want to hang out with them. I like them as characters, and I feel like having the murderer be someone who's like personally unpleasant, it doesn't feel like that sort of game. It feels like it's better written than that. In the sense that even if, the murderer does turn out to be someone personally unpleasant, it's not going to be because of that. I feel like whoever the murderer turns out to be, it's going to be, the emotion I'm going to feel is, oh no, not them. And that's why I'm experiencing the oh no, not them, where I don't want it to be any of them. So, we last left off in the middle of a scene, because I was getting tired of doing so many fucking voices, and that's probably why today's stream's going to be a bit shorter, because it takes a lot of breath. We were in the Misericorde, and what's her face? Angela had just stormed out in a bit of a huff. I don't know if you can hear, but my cat is still yowling. He's fine. He just likes attention and making big noises. So I know he doesn't come through on the mic. So this is a trial of wills where I focus on the game. Now he's in my room. Hard mode. Hello, little beast. You like to jump up on my desk and put your ass in my face when I'm trying to answer important emails. Would you like to show the lovely people your big fat ass? No? Okay. Right. Now, back to the voices. Well, since Angela isn't here to complain about them any longer, how about some ghost stories? You'll like that, Hedwig. I. Right. While navigating through my personal doldrums for the past few days, I'd completely forgotten what my reputation among the sisters currently was. Right, because we'd had like a little bit of a time skip the previous game, previous previous stream, where she Hedwig was having a bit of a disassociative moment, and sort of had a bit of a quiet stupor a couple of days, which very relatable. Not only was I a mousy, prudish, trembling little creature, an estimation I could at least agree with, oh, I had stumbled into giving off the impression of a spirit-chasing prankster. Oh man, it did not suit me. Well, I don't know. They give me the shivers. That's the point. Precisely. I will tell you all my story. Oh, must we talk about this? I was hoping we could all talk about something a little more fun. Oh, but this is fun. Oh dear. Hey, new music! Fun new tune! Ghost story music. It was just this summer that I had decided to take in some fresh air atop the Abbey wall. I wandered through the halls I was not familiar with, trying to find the stairs. All alone in a mysterious portion of the Abbey, I found the door I was looking for. When I saw the tail end of another's robe in front of me, I pursued the unknown figure, but when I emerged into the light of day, there was not a soul to be seen. Saxophone. Oh, fascinating. And this was in broad daylight. Maybe the sun blinded you. It does seem a touch flimsy. I know what I saw. At first a person was there, and then that person was not there. That's a terrible ghost story. Oh, is it? Then perhaps you would like to share a better one? Sure. Oh, hell yeah, Flora. I've got one. I like Flora. She's so 19. I saw someone outside the Superior's window late at night. That's all I guess. There's no one else in the room. There's a creepy figure in the bushes. Does that really count as a story? It absolutely does not! No panache whatsoever! Oh, I forgot to mention they had horns. And really scary glowing eyes. Great. Well done, Flora. 10 out of 10 narrative design. Oh, no! That's a little scarier. Maybe build a little suspense, though, first. Whatever. I think adding those details just makes the story more unbelievable. Why were you in the Superior's office at night, Flora? Yes, speaking of unbelievable details, that door locks tight. Now would you know that? Look, she took my charcoal away because I was scribbling with it during service, okay? Oh, she's doodling! Oh, man. I have this big collection of, my old high school and even primary school workbooks and stuff that I'm, like, going through and making a scrapbook out of. Because I used to just, like, doodle and scribble and write little notes and, make up my little stories and whatever in the margins and stuff. And I don't want to lose them, but at the same time, I don't want to have this kilograms of, just fucking old school textbooks in my house. So I'm trying to go through and save stuff. I want to see Flora's medieval doodles. Enough! Let me weave you all a tale of true terror. Look out, everyone. She's going to tell us how old she really is. Flora, be nice. Some of us were saving that exact joke for whenever Charity spoke up next. They're so mean! The nuns are fighting! Now, I'm not too proud to be honest about my age. I'm 65 and quite happy with my station. Nice. I feel like if you hit 65 in this era, you should be proud of yourself. And, like, I know that the medieval, like, life expectancy of being in the 30s is just because, like, infant mortality, just obliterates that. And most people, like, if you got to adulthood, you would get past your 50s. But, Charity seems to just be, like, enjoying her life. She doesn't seem to have, like, any major mobility or health issues or whatever. And if she does, she's managing them to the extent that she's, quite happy. So yeah, you should be happy to be 65, Sister Charity. Of course. Well, I can always wait until Marta tries to tell a ghost story. We have a rough estimate for her, at least. Marta was probably there when the white ship sank. Everyone else guffawed. I might have joined in, to be nakedly truthful. I wish I knew what the white ship was. That feels like a historical reference. Am I going to Google it? Jules isn't here, I can Google things. White ship. You like my keyboard sounds? I got a nice keyboard. It's upside down. Yeah, it's got like stars and stuff on it. I remember showing it to my dad, and he passed away last year. He was quite unwell, and he was looking at it by the time his eyesight had gotten pretty, rotten. And he was like, "How do you know? What do the special new keys do?" And I figured, because there's like stars on them, and my print screen is like a little planet and stuff. And I was like, "Well, Dad, it's a keyboard. It's just got new bits of plastic on it, so they do the same things that the buttons there always did." And this is a man who sold computers for decades. And he was like, "You remember what all the keys do?" And I was like, "Dad, I don't think I could ever forget the amount of shit that I'm typing." The White Ship was a vessel transporting many nobles, including the heir to the English throne, that sank in the Channel during a trip from France to England near Normandy on the 25th of November, 1120. Right, so this is like 300 years before the events of the game. That's the joke. Good joke, guys. If you Google White Ship, you can get some fun illuminated manuscripts of it. Hold on. Let's see if I can remember how to use OBS and see if I can show you this image. Come on. Ah, image, look! Enjoy. Look at this beautiful image of everyone fucking dying. I love the little circles in this diagram too. Fuck yeah, that rules. Okay. Be gone, image. Return to game. But now, my tale. I was approaching these very doors late one night. I had been for a nighttime stroll, and the torches had just been lit. The wind was such that they kept flickering. It was difficult to see, and strange shadows danced across the floor. Suddenly, I realized that one of the shadows in front of me was no shadow at all. It's fucking music. Not only that, I swear to you that when I bravely took one step forward, I saw the face of Death himself. Guys, it's Sans Undertale. Joke required. Well, have I sufficiently rattled you all? Eep! Not bad. Masterful, Sister Katherine! I cannot pretend otherwise. When was this cutting? Oh, I don't know the exact date. A month, perhaps 2 months ago? That might have been me. What? Impossible! I do seem to remember running into you in the hall one night when the torches were flickering in the wind like that. If that is true, why didn't you say hello? I tried, but you'd already run away. Oh, fancy that! That's not. I think this was probably a different night. Well, that's the most believable one yet, aside from mine. I'm loving the idea that Moira is just so pale that when you run into her in the middle of the night, you think she's a skull-faced demon thing. Relatable. Look, I look blue today. It's just because of my sick Guy Fieri shirt, I think. But I have my ring light on warm light, and I'm like, it's instead of like being, skin colored, I look green instead of my usual blue. I think my cat has taken a shit, and he's very excited about it. Are you having fun? You've been very quiet. You've been a bit quiet, Hedwig. Do you have a good one to share? Ooh, what the fuck was that? I think that was just a game glitch, but it was a really effective kind of like when you're in a social gathering and suddenly you're put on display and you're like, oh Jesus Christ, I gotta be a human being again. Me? Oh, no, well, I've just been so captivated by all of yours so far. Hedwig's gay story is one I won't soon forget, though. She conjures up quite an image. An excellent skill for a chronicler. To write, it's nothing really. I hope none of them had read any of my actual decidedly sparse writing yet. Well, if Hedwig is passing. Margaret? Hedwig's heard mine. I was helping clean up the kitchen one evening. Darcy had finished up, but there was a pot I wanted to give another really good scouring before putting it away. So there I was, all alone in the workshop, when I heard a strange sound. The light had started to fade, and I hadn't thought to bring a candle. The fading light of dusk through the window was all I had. I crept forward towards where I thought I heard the sound. I saw a pair of eyes. Not only that, there was another creature present as well. One with a terrible visage. All I could make out was a hideous maw and some truly evil eyes. Ah! It's Flowey. I hightailed it out of there, I have to confess. Goodness, that is an upsetting story. I bet it was just like you're in the workshop, you got like a shiny piece of metal, like a pan or something, and you just see your own distorted reflection, and it's like, ah, scary face. In the kitchen? Crumbs! I frowned. Margaret had told me a variation of the story in the chapel. It seemed to be gathering some embellishments for this larger audience. What do you think you saw? Well, if I had to hazard a guess, perhaps two demons having a meeting of some sort? A meeting? What about? I don't know. Perhaps they were arguing about who to eat first. God, speaking of demons, at the moment I'm currently reading, well, like I said, I'm having a bit of a time. So I'm like, I should read something edifying. I should, get back on my classics. And I also should practice my German, so I'm reading a bilingual edition of Goethe's Faust, because I've never read Faust before. It's one of those ones where it's like German on this page, English on that page. I haven't actually gotten to the damn play yet because the introduction is like 70 pages long. But the introduction is interesting. I like reading the introductions to things. They're there for a reason. And this one, it's giving a lot of background on like Faust as a German story that predates, especially Goethe's Faust, but like there were other plays about it. There were all the Faust books. There's puppet shows that were big when Goethe was a kid. It's a very sort of evocative, like folk story, but there was like a historical Faust in around this time that Misericorde is set in the late 1400s. And it just starts with this incredible, hold on, I think I'll just get the direct quote. Yes. The historic Faust was born, it seems, in Knittingen, Württemberg, in about 1480. According to Melchanthion, Luther's friend, Faust studied magic at the University of Krakow in Poland. In those days, magic was also taught at the universities of Salamanca and Toledo. And that's what universities should be about. Like, screw all this stuff about needing a degree to get a job. I want to go to Poland and major in magic. Or maybe Italy. And major in magic. Why can't we do that anymore? Oh, no! How gruesome! Now you're having it on. Maybe. Maybe. But I did see them. That much is true. One with the big horrible teeth. That could have been a barest. A what? The big dog? That's the one. Although dog isn't quite an apt description. I'm going to Marta's voice. This is Charity. It's a truly terrible creature that haunts old fields and old moors. Always stalking around and hunting people who wander late at night. It's not quite a hound, more of I don't rightly know. A mix of a dog and a goblin, perhaps? A doglin! Like something out of Inferno. That doesn't really narrow it down, it's a demon. They're all in there. I can only hope you didn't get a good look at him, Margaret. And why is that? Well, they say if you see him, you're destined to die. Well, everyone's destined to die. That's what being alive is. You're alive for a certain amount of time, whatever it may be, and then you die. Well, I'm not worried. No, why is that? Because I made it all up, you daft old bat. My eyebrows had shot straight up, but Charity didn't seem to mind. The whole room erupted with cackling. Oh, the cheek on you lot! I don't get that you're destined to die if you see this thing you're gonna die. Like, at least in the ring, it's like 7 days. It's like, okay, I understand the threat now. You've given me a clear time frame, and I understand what's happening. But if it's stuff like, you know, Omen, where it's like, oh, you see this doglin, and you're destined to die. It's like, I mean, I know that. I'm alive. At one point, I'm not going to be anymore. That counts as your ghost story, I take it. Of course it does, of course it does. It was very effective. My goodness. I suppose that means it's Moira's turn. Oh, really? Well, I'd have to think. It's something often said before believable stories. Look who's talking. I've been waiting for an opportunity to jump into the conversation more actively. I've been worried that my relative's silence was conspicuous. The banter between the sisters had been so acerbic that I thought my contribution would fit right in. Fortunately, it seemed that I'd missed the mark. Huh? Because, you know, yours is really short and... Okay. She may as well have slugged me in the gullet. Looked around at the others who seemed to have barely registered our exchange at all. Presumably, they were all opting to remember this embarrassing outburst forever, something to cause... Hedvig is fine! It's fine, Hedvig. Nobody's keeping a dossier of every embarrassing thing you've ever done. Chill out. I know you're stressed out because you're here at this room because you have to confront Katherine about the fact that she's got, you know, she's been lying about details of a crime scene. But it's fine. People don't hate you. It's okay. I was often unsure about who I was exactly without the purpose defined by myself. As an anchoress, I knew exactly what I was meant to do and where I fit into the world. Removed from the cell, I was utterly blind. I tried new attitudes and mimicked behaviors to find something that fit me, but all I could hope to amount to was being someone else's private joke. Jesus Christ, Hedvig. I do have a good story to tell, actually. I think it might count. Do tell. Well, one night I was walking past the cloister, and a little bit of gravel worked its way into my shoe. Terrifying. Let the woman finish, Flora! It's no problem. I stopped to finish the little rock out of my shoe. I let it against the wall, and when I looked down, I realised there was some odd footprints along the path. Odd? How? Well, they were not human footprints. They were small and pointing. Pointed? Yeah, like hooves. Anyway, the footprints continued away from the cloister. I made to follow him, but then I saw a strange figure hunched in the doorway. He turned around, and his eyes flashed in the moonlight. I was scared witless and ran all the way back up the stairs to my room. Creepy. How strange. Darcy does occasionally bring the sheep into the cloister to keep the grass short, though. There's only one set of footprints, though. Maybe they walk single file. It's the sheep marching in step. Do that thing where they step in each other's footprints to, like, obscure their numbers. Maybe. That's probably it. Don't let the little gremlin get to you, Moira. It was a fine story. I know it wasn't very well gripping, but, well, how delightfully frightful that was. Everyone raised their cups. I followed suit, although I could not keep up with the others when they proceeded to chug the contents of their drinks. None chug! Let's go! Ooh, keg stand and have your little habit flip up. Here, here! Katherine, would you mind topping me up? We continued to eat, chat, and drink for a long while. The food was delicious. The wine did a decent job of making me feel warm and pleasant enough to set any worries about my conversational skills aside, too. Oh yeah, Darcy made her like this homemade medieval antidepressant with like St. John's wort and some stomach easing stuff. And I got really worried because like I don't know what the alcohol interactions of St. John's wort are. And I still don't know. I never bothered Googling that. So I'm just still sitting here tense, wondering if she's going to vomit up black bile again this time because she's not good with alcohol consumption. I can't imagine that she's had much to do in the way of like serious drinking before, because like this is the time period where everyone was drinking weak, shitty wine or beer as just like a standard way of drinking, because as a fermented drink, it can't, you can't get diphtheria from it the way you can get from bad water. But it's very different to drink wine for the sake of drinking it, which they mentioned in the previous stream. They mentioned before that they were drinking for the sake of drinking good wine. And I'm worried about Hedwig and her ability to handle that. But what's starting to worry her, apparently, was the matter of how to approach Katherine about James the stable boy without raising any suspicions. Yeah, you're doing it in front of like half the other nuns. This was kind of not the greatest idea. I would quite like to play a game. No, thank you. Huh, you'd cheat anyway. Hedwig, I forgot. Do you know how to play? Oh, against my better judgment, I gambled. I have been learning, now that you mention it. The Superior's been teaching me. Ooh, has she now? Look at you. Well, I think it's a way of acclimating me to things outside of the cell. Everyone here talks about chess so much. More than likely, it's her mea culpa for dragging you out of there. I tried to remain calm, but I was gripping my seat so hard I could hear my fingers pop. No, it was my decision to leave. Oh, I just felt it was the right thing to do. The Superior explained to me that the Abbey was in desperate need of a chronicler, and that this would be much quicker than sending word around the country. So, deep down, you always wanted out of that horrible little cell. It wasn't horrible. I had to correct myself immediately. I had to stick to my story. But, yes, I suppose I did. I understand that to most people lying comes easily. People do it to stay out of trouble, or to make themselves look stronger or wiser or more interesting to each other. It is a sin, but such is the way of this wicked world. But you must understand that when I was an anchoress, I told a single lie. Here in the Misericorde, committed to Superior's conspiracy, every falsehood felt like I was spitting a burr out of my mouth. I think maybe that was one, because we're still in typo version because my save was fucked up. There might have been a typo. She had not told a single lie. But even then, even if she had only told one lie. You were quite a mess when I first saw you in there. Well, I wasn't dressing for an audience then, was I? Everyone chuckled. I was quickly learning that making people laugh was the fastest way to steer them away from topics I didn't want to talk about. Your frock is still a bit big for you, I have to say. I think it looks nice. She looks all cozy all the time. So, Hedwig, chess? Go on then. Adela beamed at me, and I got up to retrieve the chessboard and pieces from the shelf. The still ample platter of meat was pushed to the side of the table to make space. I did get on that chess.com shit. I've got the chess.com app of my phone now, and I'm realizing that I am truly abysmal at playing chess. Like, I have no idea how to make it work. Like, I will get down... I played chess like it's a war of attrition. I will, like, obliterate all the pieces from the board and just have, like, my king and, like, one queen that used to be a pawn, and the opponent's just their king, and I'm just chasing around the board and I cannot make them checkmate. Game hard. One of the wineskins came dangerously close to falling to the floor before Katherine caught it. That'd be a waste. Too right. Top me up. Alright, chess. The board was set up, save for two pieces. Adela approached me with her hands balled up in fists and held them out to me. Which hand? Why not just let her go first? Give her the white pieces. She's new here and our guest to boot. Nonsense. This is part of the game. Let's see. Your right hand. Adela opened her right hand to reveal a black pawn nestled in her palm. Black it is. Ooh, unlucky. Not at all. Someone must strike first, but that is not necessarily an advantage. When Kerboga struck first at Antioch, he still tasted defeat. Yes, of course. How could any of us forget Kerboga? I don't know how to pronounce that. Miss Jules, she can read Arabic. Kiwam al-Dawla Kerboga. Sorry. Rode to Antioch with his men after hearing of a Christian siege. Wait, so didn't the Christians go first then? I think we're dividing very specific battles up into individual chess games here. The crux of the matter is that Sister Hedwig will suffer no disadvantage going second. Needless to say, Adela trounced me. I felt confident for a move or two. but it became clear quite quickly that I was out of my depth. Well, I think that was not bad for a beginner. You got her in, what, 20 moves? That is better than I would expect from a player who only learned what chess is a week or so ago. That's a good point. Hedwig, walk me through your strategy. Well, I don't really know, to tell you the truth. It's mostly just reacting to your moves. Is that so? That'd explain it. Really now. If you're only reacting to me, it is no wonder I won. That would follow, I suppose. I am setting the pace of the whole game. Eventually, you must make your own move. You must force me to react to you. So we just act and react, back and forth, till somebody wins. I believe that is the game, yes. Katherine. Yes, Hedwig. Because we are not competing to see who can make the single best decision. Chess is not just competing to see who can survive the most moves, but to see whose strategy can adapt and overcome everything your opponent throws at you. Two souls locked in a complicated and deadly dance. Pure romance. So I've heard you say. She gets it. Adela does get it. She knows what's up. That's very interesting. Thank you. Hedwig, would you mind if I played around? Vatanu has got me in the mood to play. Oh, yes, of course. A fine idea. Rotating chairs. Who can stay in the victor's seat the longest? I can guess. You are welcome to challenge me as well, Sister Flora, if you feel you deserve to dethrone me. Flora rolled her eyes as I got up to offer my seat to Moira. The tight group that had formed around the table to watch Adela and I play scattered somewhat. Margaret walked over to the shelf to peruse the entertainment at offer, and Katherine sat down closer to the fireplace. She brought her wineskin with her, and poured herself another cup as soon as she was situated. I craned my neck over Charity's shoulder to try and watch Moira and Adela's game. I found myself surprisingly eager to learn some new tips. No, go sit with Katherine. You have to talk to her. However, I was quickly interrupted with Katherine calling from across the room. Hedwig, have a drink with me. Oh, yes, of course. There we go. Plot. I pulled up a chair next to her as she poured me a cup of wine. Oh, nice. New art. There we are. This is good stuff. It's very flavorful. Oh, that's me. It's very flavorful. It's made here, you know. It's the only reason this wretched place exists. The only... Surely that's not true. Abbeys are a source of wine and money. And absolution for people willing to give them money. Believe me, I'm well acquainted with how these places really work. You and I are very similar, if you can believe it. I do apologize if I've ever made you feel lesser than some of the others. No, not at all. I was once like you. Alone and confused in a place very different from what I was used to. Of course, you left your position by choice, but nonetheless. I could not correct her, especially as this topic had nearly bubbled over very recently. But I wanted to. Desperately. I, on the other hand, was ripped from a perfectly comfortable life for a variety of unjust reasons. Oh, come on, yeah, backstory. Come on, Katherine, tell me! Why do you have to be in the convent? You were forced to become a nun. That's not right. I mean, I would choose no other life for myself, but my goodness, you really were locked away for a long time. And it's quite common, even if my particular circumstances are outstandingly unfair. It's a very easy way for a family to get rid of a woman they're not fond of. I was once the lady of a great house. Which came, of course, with a certain nasty politics of its own. In that aspect, it was not at all different from living here. Really? The politicking. Just the politicking. The clothes, the jewels, the freedom. I would put up with the ghastly parlour games to have that all back. I wasn't sure what politicking at the Abbey she was referring to, but this was no time to get hung up on the little details. Wow, Katherine was the rich girl. Well, there could be more than one. So, what happened? If you don't mind my asking. I stepped on some of the wrong toes in high society. Put some noses out of joint and was accused of some unsavory things I'd rather not repeat. And so I was offered the choice of facing the court and a likely execution, or taking the vows. Execution. I don't have any concept of what exactly she could be accused of that would get her executed like that. Would they do that for adultery, or I mean, like, they're just making shit up about her. She could have been accused of, I don't know, something bad. I chose the latter. At least I can still grab onto the barest threads of life's great pleasures here, occasionally. She took a deep sip of her drink. Well, that just isn't right. A criticism of the church. Goodness will make a sea dog of you yet. I didn't say that, but if this happens often, it does sound like some people abuse the concept of the monastery. You know, I think shuffling people out of sight might be the concept of the monastery. Come now, that can't be true. Monasteries do wonderful things. They're centers of prayer, research, and rigorous academic study, and we help those in need. It's an important calling. Do we do any of that here? How many people in need do we help all the way up on this hill? There isn't another village for miles, and the fine folk of Lynbarrow would have to trek up a mountain to get here. Well, perhaps Lynbarrow Tor Abbey is more of a monastery for prayer and learning and so on. Present company excluded, of course, but I don't think much earnest prayer emanates from these halls. Nor do I think we are likely to be responsible for any academic or scholarly pursuits of note anytime soon. Katherine II would have argued otherwise, of course. She desperately wanted all of us to have amusing little projects. She was constantly pursuing some sort of greatness, whether for herself or the whole abbey. What did she want for you? She desperately wanted to get me to act in one of her little performances. She said I had a natural disposition for it. Did you ever take her up on it? Once or twice. I did not hate it, but acting for an audience of just a few other nuns didn't give me much satisfaction. Still, that sounds very sweet. I should have liked to have watched one of those performances. You are too sweet. Too kind. We'll beat that out of you eventually. She chuckled dryly and reached for the wineskin to pour herself another cup. Now that she's gone, the only product of note here is the wine. And when Marta eventually pops it, grim, I know, but I'm just being realistic, that'll be the last of any worth this place had gone. When the wine dries up, so will we. Speaking of, she shook the wineskin and it flopped back and forth unceremoniously. Is that one dead? Goodness, you made me jump! Sorry. I'm just coming over to see if you wanted another. Oh, you are positively angelic. Margaret grinned ever so slightly and began pouring out of a much fuller-looking wineskin than the deflated lump Katherine was holding. I noticed that Katherine was beginning to look a little rosy in the cheeks. I felt dastardly even considering this, but if there was ever a time to ask her about James. Wonderful. You know, that reminds me. We haven't had a proper wake for Unbelievable! Flora was holding the platter of meat and staggering on one leg. She looked surprised she had managed to catch the food at all. Chess pieces had clattered to the floor all around the pair of players. Adela looked furious. Moira, however, was clearly trying her hardest not to laugh out loud. Katherine, Margaret, and I all hurried over to see what the fuss was about. I'm sorry, Adela, but it's true. What on earth did you do? She uses underhand tactics to try and eke out a pathetic victory. Oh, come now. I was just playing normally. And how's that? She was taking every piece possible, whether it was logical to do so or not. Oh no, here we go. Not another argument about bloody maiden's chess again. I wasn't trying to do anything malicious. I just captured... this is what I do. Fuck. I've been read. I just captured little pieces, I guess. You captured every time it was remotely possible, even if it was not strategically important. Violence for the sake of violence. Total barbarism. Passionless, ugly brutality. Was it really every time it was possible? Yes, do not pretend otherwise. Oh dear. Hand on heart, I promise I was not playing by maiden's rules on purpose. I was just, well, eager. Eager? Eager to prove myself. You're very good at chess. I thought that being aggressive would be my best strategy. That could hardly be called a strategy. You and Hedwig played just the same. Well, there is one small difference. I won. Raucous laughter went up from all of the sisters, all except Adela, who looked like she might need to be physically restrained from leaping onto Moira like one of the bears Angela was so worried about. I demand a rematch. A rematch where we understand we are playing the same game by the same rules. The rules of real chess, not this oafish perversion. If it will make you happy. We set to work writing the table and finding all the scattered pieces that had found their way across the room. Any requests? Yes! The loot! Margaret's Spotify hour! Margaret had managed to sneak up behind me as I was bent over picking up a wayward pawn. Ah! Sorry. I stood up and turned around to see her idly strumming a bulbous wooden instrument. Yes! Loot! I think it's about time for some music. Is there anything you'd like to hear? I bit my lip. I was not sure how to answer this question without sounding icier than I wanted to be at the moment. I was trying to make friends, not alienate anyone more than I already had. Oh, silly question. My apologies. Well, not silly, I appreciate it. Just, you know, they really should have given you an instrument in there. A flute, perhaps. I never felt like I needed one. It might have been fun, though. She had started plucking the strings and bobbing up and down, a slight grin emerging on her lips. She swayed side to side a little, but kept her eyes on me the whole time. Another silly question, but I may as well go for it. You do know what music is, right? Of course I do! I heard it occasionally as a little girl. And there's lots of it mentioned in the Bible. As a little girl, yes. Can we get any kind of sliver of information about who you were before you were put in the big hole? Joyful noise, yes. I'd be curious to know what you remember from before you were interred, though. Well, I vaguely remember one about summer. Summer is ecumenin? That must be it. That's quite old. It's something Marta would consider out of fashion. Well, I never claimed to have been a particularly fashionable child. Summer is ecumen in Ihude sing cuckoo. Yes, that's the one. It's a fun one. Want to sing it? Oh no, everyone! A little musical accompaniment for the clash of the armies, yes? I flushed red as everyone turned to look at us. All of the pieces had returned to the chessboard the sisters were crowded around, save for the pawn I held in my hand. Adela opened her hand and looked at me expectantly. Instinctively, I tossed it. She snatched it out of midair, gave me a little smile as a cheer went up from around the room. Nice. God, that would have been terrifying. You know she doesn't have great experience with hand-eye coordination or anything. She fell down a hill last time. Oh. Now that's the social situation that would scare the crap out of me and make me overthink everything, is tossing something to someone. Overthink it immediately. Perhaps it was the wine, or perhaps hearing everyone cheer for my expert chess piece throw had gone to my head, but I did not protest. Instead, Suba is ecumen in Ihudu kututu. What is that? Yeah. Groweth said and bloweth med. Despite my initial bravery, I could feel myself turning redder and redder. However, once Margaret chimed in, the rest of the room did too. In short order, nearly everyone was singing along as Moira and Adela began their second game. I had no idea if I was anywhere close to the right tune or pitch, but it didn't matter. There was something intoxicating about hearing everyone together, loosely guided by Margaret's lute strings. The song lasted for several chess moves. When the song ended, everyone was clapping and laughing. Even Flora looked amused, her usual frown twisted into something like a smile. It's bloody winter, though. All the more reason for a summer tune. Hear, hear. Cups clinked together as everyone toasted. Moira and Adela's game continued apace. Adela looked like frustration was getting the better of her again. Her moves began to feature loud punctuation. She was practically thrusting her pieces onto the board. It also looked like playing with a different set of rules was making Moira take things more seriously. She looked thoughtful, took to tenting her fingers under her nose and leaning forward between turns. Even without Moira using her old strategy, the amount of pieces was dwindling fast. Adela was certainly being more aggressive. She had navigated her queen into a domineering position on Moira's side of the board, close to her king. I think I have you. No. Moira slid her own queen further up the board to the side. That is of no help to you. Only a handful of pawns remained on either side, save for each side's king and queen. Adela, however, seemed to be primed to deal a fatal blow. Moira had elected to move her queen further to the right-hand side of the board, presumably to pin Adela's king from afar, but it appeared as though she had moved the critical piece dangerously close to one of Adela's pawns. I think it might be. You have left your queen completely open to me. Well, not entirely. You still have to get a pawn into position to take her, which I shall do. She slid the pawn next to Moira's queen with dramatic confidence. Are you even playing anymore? Perhaps I have bored you. No, just, I don't know how to put this. You can't take my queen. What do you mean? Of course I can. No, I don't think so. Moira carefully lifted her queen up, then placed it back down the board, directly diagonal to Adela's own advancing queen. What? I must ask again, are you even paying attention? However, a murmur of understanding was passing through the rest of the room. Adela, don't set me up like that. What on earth are you talking about? Are you even paying attention? She gestured to the board, pointing at the relative position of her own king and queen and Adela's attacking queen. If you take my king can't move. I can't rightfully put him in check, can I? Of course not. Wait, which would result in a stalemate. Is that correct? So, perhaps we can agree to a draw? Of all the dirty tricks! Sister Moira, I am shocked. Wasn't a trick? Or rather, it's not like this was my plan, but you were playing really well. This was the only defense I could conjure up. Moira might as well have been pissing on Adela's food in front of her the way Adela was glaring at her. God. So, draw? Yes, it is a draw. Another cheer went up around the room as Adela begrudgingly shook Moira's hand over the chessboard. I suppose that means both seats are open. Yes, I suppose so. She stood up sulkily and made off for the wineskin that Katherine had left on her chair by the fireplace. Moira vacated her seat too, looking sheepish. Anyone want to take me on? Ooh, go on then. I was starting to get a little worried that I would never get a chance to corner Katherine, although at the very least her drinking was not slowing down. As long as I could get to her, I was certain I could get what I needed. The issue at this point seemed to be getting to her at all. Margaret was pacing about the room, strumming a pleasant tune on her lute. I could see Flora reaching for a book on the corner shelf. However, when she brought it to a chair by the fireplace, she held it over her knee rather than open to read. Margaret! Grin, Flora began to beat the book with her palms. A driving rhythm was created. It was one that Margaret clearly knew. Oh, fuck yes. Some chiptune stuff. As she immediately returned with a lute melody that fit snugly between Flora's makeshift drum beats. Ooh! Moira ran over to the shelf and retrieved a small wooden flute. As soon as she had an opening, she began to play along with Margaret and Flora. The tune was wild and a little jagged, but it was one everyone in the room seemed to know. Save for me, of course. Katherine began swaying back and forth in her seat, and I could see Charity's head moving underneath her hood. Adela, however, was breaking into a full-on dance, jumping and twirling like a madwoman. I must admit I was stymied. These people were unrecognizable, and I had no idea what to do. There was no way I was going to dance, and I wasn't particularly interested in getting another chess lesson from my betters. To avoid looking foolish, I did the one thing available to me to feel like I belonged in the room. Drink. I was no stranger to wine. I had it with every meal, even when I was still an anchoress. This was a new experience. Nobody in this room was drinking to quench their thirst. They were all drinking for the sake of drinking, chasing a stupor that was expressly discouraged, if not outright forbidden, by the texts all of them held sacred. What was I to do? I was conscious enough to understand that this was not the time to proselytize. I closed my eyes, briefly, to pray that my transgressions would be understood. I was here to seek justice for a murdered woman. I was here to clear an innocent man's name. The songs kept going and going. It could have been one long, shifting song for all I knew. I didn't recognize any of the tunes this makeshift band was playing, but all of them proved popular with the room. I found myself swaying along with the music without thinking. Adela made her way over to me, and... "Oh, Adela!" I suppose the best description I can muster is she began dancing at me. She got very close to my face. She bumped her hips against mine, almost knocking me over. I held my drink with both hands and held it in front of me like a shield. I had no idea how to dance alone, let alone with a partner. I don't know how to dance. It is easy. You just need to move. I am moving. We were both shouting over the music. Adela laughed and retreated away while still shaking to the beat of Flora's book drum. At the other end of the room, she beckoned to me. I relented, moving forward, and I honestly can't describe what I did with my legs. I just sort of moved them. Kicked them, perhaps? Oh. I'd rather not dwell on it. Suffice to say, it was enough to pass for dancing, but not good enough to keep Adela and the band members from giggling at me. These are nice memories. I hope I'm not boring you. Oh. Hedwig. My girl. The engines of the night decayed slowly but surely. There had been a steady rotation of sisters between chess games and dancing, but the games of chess were now much less raucous. The dancers, myself included, were now sitting down, and Margaret was the last musician still playing a tune. She stood by the crackling fire, staring into the flames and plucking out a bittersweet tune. Her fingers moved delicately over the strings. The intensity with which she stared into the fireplace gave the impression she was serenading the flames themselves. That's a really lovely tune. What is it? Thank you. I don't know, really. It's my own. I don't have a name for it. Oh, well, it's beautiful. She turned away from the fireplace and flashed one of her sad smiles at me. I sometimes wonder if I ever had a single earnest exchange while I was outside of this cell. You and I, as we are here, is as honest as it can get for me. I am free from reinterpreting whatever flickers across your face as your true intent. Speaking face to face is like reading a book with words that rearrange themselves. Man, that's a crazy statement, but it's really beautiful, and it also reveals a lot about her. I really like it. It's really sad. Aren't you going to ask me what it's about? What's what about? The song. It doesn't have any words, so what could it possibly be about? Margaret smiled again. It still didn't come across as happy exactly, but there was some warmth in her face this time. Of course. How silly of me. I don't understand. I'm the one who doesn't understand. I keep asking you these questions as if you were anyone else. Am I so different? Compared to these women. She tilted her head towards the others, who were all preoccupied in quiet conversations of their own. Very. None of them see the world quite like you do. That makes me sound a little too important. I didn't say you were better than them. And for that matter, I don't think they're better than you. Everyone here is just different. And you're different in a very interesting way. We speak the same language, but sometimes I feel like I barely understand anyone. Or that nobody understands you. I felt the same way. And I've often wondered, is the onus to change on you or them? Me. That was a quick answer. Well, why should it be anyone else's responsibility? Very noble. But by that same token, why should it be yours? Because I'm new, and I'm more out of place than they are. There are more of you than me, if that makes sense. More people who have lived their lives outside of little rooms. I couldn't possibly demand everyone else start making concessions for me. That's very interesting. When I asked you what the song meant, what was your first reaction? Inside, in your mind, before you spoke. I thought, how can a song with no words mean anything? My response was earnest, I assure you. You were very honest. Does the music make you feel something, though? It's very sad compared to what you were all playing before. You can tell? That's wonderful. But still, your question is perfectly valid. There are no words, so how could it have any meaning? I came up with this tune when I was feeling rather melancholy. I think the notes match. These notes sound sad to me. I have no idea how I would know that, and even less of an idea of how you might know it. Anyway, it was silly of me to ask, but it does seem like deep down you understood me. That's fascinating, but I don't understand a word of it. She chuckled. This is the sort of thing Bea and Katherine used to talk about. Thank you, Hedvig. Is it really? Yes. I must admit I'm cribbing from her work a little here. She asked me these questions almost exactly once upon a time, when I was new. I told her about how, when I was a little girl, it was the hymns that kept me interested in Mass, despite not knowing what any of the lyrics meant. She laughed and said that was proof that God was in the music itself. I didn't understand what she meant at the time. I didn't agree. I might still have some complicated thoughts about all of it. But whenever I play music, I think about that. I miss her laugh. She began to pluck a new tune on her instrument. That was one of hers. What I can remember of it, anyway. I wish I could recall the whole thing. I had no idea how to respond to this, and endeavored to move past the evidently raw subject. One forlorn drunkard had already been enough for me. Unfortunately, I managed to put my foot in my mouth instead. Margaret, you're from far away, yes? Oh! Ooh, fuck. Come on, Hedwig. Come on, Hedwig. Don't do this, man. Come on. Here we go. Go on. And I may as well be from someplace far away. Are we similar in that regard? Do we have a sort of kinship as outsiders? Oh god. My cat is arriving to spare me from this conversation. But here we go. I've lived my whole life in England, Hedwig. As did my father. And his father. And his mother, for that matter. So, no, not particularly. She continued to strum her lute, but I could feel a sucking void in between each note. I am sorry. The superior, well, at that luncheon, I must have misinterpreted. She smiled thinly, with none of the subtle humor her vexatious expressions often betrayed. I could sense that I had tested her patience. The superior has never once asked me about my life. Keep that in mind in case she's told you anything else about me. I must have looked a right fool as I gawped at her and tried to think of something to say, but just then, Hedwig! Hedwig, 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 Hedwig. The sudden intrusion made me jump. I turned around, but I couldn't see where Flora was. Down here. Flora was sprawled out on the stone floor. I don't know how I'm going to voice a drunk Flora without making it sound like my Darcy voice. Her head was so close to my foot that I might have tripped had I taken a step to the side. What are you doing on the floor? Convalescing. I feel sick when I stand up, but down here is good. That makes sense. Are you alright? Yes, this is normal, I think. Katherine said this is normal. I glanced across the room to Katherine, who was sitting at the table, looking only slightly more conscious than Flora. If I lay down for long enough, I'll feel normal again. Good advice! Lie down for long enough, you feel normal again. And then I can have some wine. Oh, I think there's plenty left. That's a rather big cask. I bet I could fit in it if I drank the rest of what's in there. But I'd go steady now if I were you. Shh. I need to ask Hedwig a question. What do you need, Flora? Well, you used to make all those Bibles, yeah? And you know how to make pictures? Do you mean illuminating? Yes, that's what I said. Illuminating. Yes, Flora, I did a little illuminating. So, 2 ideas. I have 2 ideas for you. Go on then. I can't wait to hear this. Idea number 1. Where's all the gold from that? The gold? A gold from the illuminating. Keep up! You mean the leaf, the gold leaf? Illuminating manuscripts involve a lot of colourful pigments, including gold leaf. I always enjoyed filling in the little details, like halos and jewelleries, with my little brush. I must admit, though, that it wasn't my favourite colour to work with. I was partial to the deep blue pigment I broke out for depictions of certain robes, eyes, and the ocean. Yeah, that's pretty. Right, where do we keep all that? I'm not sure. It would get brought to me in little pots every few months. I think the bishops bought them. Fuck, it's not here? I feel myself turning hot with embarrassment and shock. Flora's drunken demeanour was already knocking me off keel, and her vulgar outburst set my teeth on edge. I don't think so. Sorry, Flora. Did you want to paint with it? No, I wanted... I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. I wanted to steal it! Oh my god. Come on, Flora. Think about it. We could be rich, and we could have split it half and half. 3 ways. I'd want in on the steal too. Fuck! Fair's fair, I suppose. That's... Flora, how could you? Hedwig, I don't think you need to take this very seriously. Plotting to rob the Abbey, or worse, the diocese itself. This is very serious. You're no fun. It's paint, Flora. What Hedwig means is that the gold isn't worth anything when it's paint. I knew it was too good to be true. Tough luck. What would you even do with all that gold? If it was really gold, I mean. What do you think? us three, we get out of this flipping abbey. Go someplace far away. She gestured broadly with her hand, I presume to imitate a bird or the wind or something. Oh, bless her. Why would we want to do that? Because I hate it here. Tears started welling up in her eyes. I had no idea what to say. Flora, let's get you up. Come on. She extended a hand down to Flora. I followed suit, although I'm not sure I was much help. We dragged the poor girl to her feet and brought her to one of the chairs by the fireplace. She looked positively sodden. Oh, baby girl, baby. I want to protect her. I hate it here. So much. There. Surely you don't mean that. Margaret shot me a look, and for the first time ever I could sense true venom behind her eyes. It was the briefest flash of anger, but it was enough to make me feel like a flower looking up at a boot. Why do you hate it here, Flora? There's nothing to do, and I'm all alone. Margaret reached out and clasped her shoulder. You aren't alone, but I understand. I am, though. There's no one my age here. Nobody talks to me. I don't know what I'm doing here. I never wanted to join a convent. She broke down into little hiccuping sobs. Margaret got down on one knee and squeezed Flora's hand in hers. I was too much of a coward to follow suit. All I could do was stand there stupidly, hoping some of the immense pity I was feeling would be detectable to Flora and Margaret. I wanted to help, but I had not a single earthly idea what help looked like. You never had a choice, did you, Flora? Flora shook her head. I miss Katherine. I do too. She would talk to me. She was your lot's age, but she at least knew how to listen. She was the only person who felt like a real sister to me. I opened my mouth to point out that sister was merely a title, but thought better of it. Katherine made time for everyone. I'm sorry if it feels like we haven't made time for you, Flora. I can try harder. But I like being alone. She started sobbing again. I was bewildered by this contradiction, but Margaret just smiled. I get it. I do understand. I really do. Us old fogies aren't much fun to be around, are we? Flora shook her head, and Margaret chuckled. We're all you have, I'm afraid. Not if I leave. You can't leave, Flora. None of us can. Our vows are perpetual. They don't have to be. I mean, Hedvig, she pointed at me weakly. Hedvig broke hers, and she was an anchoress or what have you. That was different, Flora. How? I had an answer for this, but I could not share it. Instead, I had to stew in the uncomfortable silence between the three of us. I'm certain that's a more complicated situation, Flora. Well, maybe I could be complicated. I would be happy telling people it was complicated if I asked how I could leave. There's always other convents you could transfer to one day. You could go to London or Spain. I'm sure they have a lot more nuns your age in abbeys that aren't in the middle of nowhere like our boring old place. Remember when Katherine and you were planning a visit to Italy? Yeah. Maybe we can try and put something like that together again for you. I just hate to see you break your vows and throw your life away. Would that be so bad? Yes. The two of them turned to look at me inquisitively. A trace of the same rage I had sensed earlier flickered behind Margaret's eyes, but I forged onward. Take it from me, Flora. Don't break your vows. Your life might feel difficult sometimes, but those struggles are nothing compared to the regret you would feel breaking that oath. If the guilt didn't consume you, the world would. No man would marry you. No lord would want your service. You would have nowhere to go but back to the church. And then you would be right back where you started, feeling all the same things with the added yoke of despair that no matter how hard you threw yourself into the work, no matter how much you believed in your vows this time, that you had made that choice, that you were once an apostate. That's a millstone you could never take off. Jeez, this is so fucking heavy. It's so well done though. I'm like so entranced by this. Flora looked ready to burst into tears again. Margaret had cast her eyes to the floor. How would you know? Because that is how I feel every day, Flora. Sister Margaret is right. My choice was complicated, but I've regretted it every day since, and I will for every waking moment of my life. You don't want to end up like me. Hedwig's right, Flora. Leaving this life can be very tempting, but there's really nowhere else to go. I don't know. I don't know if that makes me feel better. I promise I will do whatever I can to make you feel more at home here. Hedwig will too. Won't you, Hedwig? Yes, of course. Thank you. She sniffled and pulled her hand away from Margaret's. She tilted her thumbs together in her lap and feebly attempted to smile. I guess it's just the wine. I mean, where would I go? You can still travel the world if you really want to. There's no reason we can't ask the Superior to send you somewhere nice one day. We just don't want you to throw your life away. Believe me, everyone in this room has been where you are right now. Really? When I was your age, I once tried to escape in the back of a delivery cart. I was going to hop off from the village and get a boat across the lake. From there, I'd hitchhike to London, marry a wealthy man, maybe a visiting dignitary or something of the sort. I had big ideas. Why didn't you? Margaret grinned. Her eyes were slightly glassy. Katherine had more or less the same conversation with me that we're having with you now. She begged me to stay. She asked what she could do to convince me. And? Well, that's when I said I wanted to play the lute. We all remained silent for a moment. Flora, forgive me, but earlier you said you had 2 ideas. Is there something someone could do? Oh, that. No, it was nothing. Go on. Tell us. Well, I was going to ask if you could teach me what you know about illumination, Hedwig. After all, I'd need some skills if I were ever to leave, wouldn't I? You wanted to steal a bunch of gold paint to fund your life in the run as an artist? Margaret started to giggle. Flora looked affronted at first, but eventually joined in with a quiet chuckle of her own. Shove off! No, I like it. It's better than my plan was. Well, I'm rubbish at drawing, so a bit of a non-starter. Hedwig will teach you. Won't you, Hedwig? Margaret's tone was light, but she was looking at me with grim intensity. Of course I will. I can't promise much. I've only ever worked on illuminated Bibles, but just the basics. That's all I need. That's right. It's good to start somewhere. Katherine taught me about music, and she wasn't exactly Hildegard. Flora stood up from her chair. She was wobbly on her feet, a reminder that she was still very, very drunk. As she lurched towards me, she threw her arms around me unannounced, marking the second time this evening that I had no idea how to respond to somebody's touch. Thanks, Hedwig. You're alright, you know that? Well, give the lady some space, Flora. She probably doesn't want to smell your wine breath. Why don't you go eat something? Flora released me from her embrace and gave Margaret a vaguely affirmative hand gesture. She spun around on her heel, still a little unbalanced, and wandered off towards the table. Goodness. I haven't seen anyone get that pissed in a while. Did I say something wrong? I don't think so. I think we did the best we could. Did you mean it? Mean what? About breaking your vows. Do you really feel that way? Oh. Yes. There was no sense in walking things backward. Huh. Why did you do it then? In retrospect, I probably would not have made the same decision. That's why I felt it was worth telling Flora. Margaret nodded thoughtfully. Well, lovely chatting with you. She picked up her lute from the chair next to the one Flora had been sitting in, and then left to put it back on the shelf. Crumbs, what's gotten into Flora? Katherine had wandered over to our side of the Misericorde, nursing a drink in one hand and resting the other on her hip. Oh, I think she just had a little too much to drink. Too right. I heard her bawling over here and thought to stay out of it, but now she's at the table yammering on and on about cats. How are you faring? Me? well, having fun. To a degree. We've been consoling Flora. It worked. She's back to being quite irritating. Well, you can thank Hedwig. She's the expert. Ooh. Did you impart some of your anchoress wisdom? Yes, I suppose I did. It was tough, but it was what Flora needed to hear. Marvelous. I still remember visiting your odd little window and asking all about something or other. You were quite a blunt instrument, if I recall. Was I? I once came to the window to ask what the punishment for breaking a promise was. You were prepared with a whole lecture about how I shouldn't be taking any oaths in the first place, with several citations from Matthew on hand, of course. I'm afraid I don't remember that. It was years and years ago. It doesn't surprise me. Do you remember many of our questions? Do you know who asked what? I remember questions, but not who asked them, and I wouldn't tell anyone if I did. Good. I mean, not why I was asking, but good. Oh, why were you asking? So, how's your first thingy? How's your first thingy? Good question. Oh, it's been fun. Don't worry about Flora. Someone always cries at one of these. Sometimes more than one person. Oh no. It's her more often than not. Me? Me crying? Absolutely untrue. I have a reputation to maintain. Uh-huh. A deal has flipped the table over and someone started getting weepy. I'd say you're getting about as rigorous an education in Misericorde etiquette as you possibly could have. It's certainly been a learning experience. Oh, but it's been fun, Riot. We're having fun. This is fun. Fun. Enjoy yourself. Katherine was just as wine-addled as Flora had been, but it was clearly affecting her differently. Flora had almost seemed like a different girl. Katherine was simply multiplied. Yeah, there are some people that get drunk and they're just like, all of their sliders are pushed up to 11. They become the most themselves. Whatever clarity she'd been expecting when we chatted by the fire earlier, clarity she had been experiencing, had been enhanced with a slightly manic energy. I'm having fun. Yes, absolutely. Good, good. Because, you know, the superior would have me hanged if you didn't have a good time. Really? She put you up to this? Oh, good heavens, no, I can just intuit these things. You know, I can just see her bearing down on me because you complained. I don't complain to the superior. That's good. I mean, not that you have anything to complain about. Sorry, I wasn't insinuating you would complain, just that... By the way, did you actually know that cow Angela complained about me to her once? To get back at me for... I forgot where I was going with this. You were going to sit down and take it easy, I think. Yes, yes. Thank you, Margaret. Yes, I was. I could sense that my window was closing. Katherine was a very different kind of drunk than Flora, but it seemed like she too was not far from falling to the floor. Actually, Margaret, could you give me a minute? Of course. She looked a little confused, but she obliged. Love her! Very clever. Isn't she just? Margaret's wonderful. Katherine, I've been meaning to ask you something, and it's very important. If it's about the cat, it isn't mine. No, it's not about the cat. And I need to get Eustace or one of the other crafty ones to help me with my door. I'm sorry if it bothers you. Does the door bother you? No, it's now or never. Here we go. Oh, shit, I skipped past that. Oh, hey, you scroll up and it gives you the history. Cool feature. James. I spoke to James. He says you can vouch for him about the night Katherine II died. Can you? Is that true? Catherine's brow furrowed slowly, and her eyes adjusted in a strange and unexpected manner. It was like I had forcibly sucked the wine out of her somehow. You spoke to James? What did he say? Not much at all. He professed his innocence, though, and he said you might be able to prove it. Something to do with his travelling cloak. What travelling cloak? Ooh, sorry. The one Darcy found. I was speaking in a whisper lower than I had known I was capable of. I was terrified that someone might overhear, but there was no turning back now. Not here. You can't talk about this here. Not with everyone else around. Then when? And where? Everyone turned to the door in unison. Are we expecting something? Perhaps Sister Darcy has bought some more food. Moira, who'd been sitting closer to the door, stood up to answer it first. She removed the bolt, swung open the door, and... Whee! Moira fell into her backside and scrambled away from the door on all fours. Everyone else screamed and wailed as soon as they saw it was at the door. The same hulking figure that had threatened me at the end of the hallway all those nights ago. The cloaked figure lumbered forward, its metal boots thudding against the stone floor. Everyone had made for the back of the room as fast as they could, all yelling at the top of their lungs. I felt myself absolutely petrified, but I could not bring myself to move. I just stood there, assuredly as white as a sheet, unable to move. I felt like my heart would give up if I took even one step. The monster took another laboured step toward me. I stood there dumbstruck as it brought itself before me. A gauntleted hand reached under its cloak, and with a horrible grinding shriek, it drew its sword. Everyone screamed again. They were practically baying. What voice should I do for this? Fuck, okay, Cease your feeble inquiries, Sister Hedwig! I'm not afraid of you. Could you believe that this was not a lie? Faced with the sword, I felt an odd sense of peace. The glint of the blade in the candlelight, it offered me a noble release from the predicament I found myself in. Do not force my hand! Cease! Did you not hear me? I am not afraid. Then you truly are a fool! Strike me down, then. I will gladly die in service to the Lord. I will gladly give myself in defense of what is right and just. If you would have me killed for pursuing the truth, then so be it. Ha! I could practically hear everyone's head tilting in confusion at once. A musical chord of rustling fabric. I grow tired of this conversation. Consider this a warning. Still pointing their sword at me, the figure took a lurching step backward, only to trip on its own cloak. The women who had been huddled behind me rushed forward. Adela grabbed the sword that had fallen out of my assailant's hand and held it at their neck. Adela, stop! Remove your disguise, cur, before I cut off your head and remove it myself! The cloaked figure held up their hands defensively. The hands looked far too small for the bulky gauntlets they wore. I glanced at their legs and was shocked to see they were twisted and broken. Your legs? Are you alright? Oh yes, let's make sure the creep's legs are unharmed. Stop! Stop! My legs are alright. The voice sounded less ragged and imposing now. The figures shifted their weight, and I realized the big metal boots they'd been wearing had simply come off from the tumble. With a sense of resignation, the monster lifted its hands to the black cloth mask concealing its face, and... Eustace?! Oh my god! Surprise! I did not expect that. I was so hyped when the scary figure showed up. I was like, it's happening. Katherine has returned from the grave to preserve the mystery of her fake murder. But it's fucking Eustace, who's tiny. Was she like standing on top of the boots? Eustace, it was you? Yes. Wait a minute. So you're telling me Hedwig's ghost prank was actually your prank? That's right. Eustace winced as she pulled herself to her feet. My most elaborate ever. I know you enjoy tormenting people with your practical jokes, but this was a bit much. Hang on. I don't enjoy tormenting people. That was terrifying! I was so confused! I was dumbfounded. Part of me was relieved to discover that the ghost I had been seeing was not a ghost at all, but the other part of me was feeling something indescribable towards Eustace. Eustace, why? Well, that's a good question. Mostly because I thought it would be funny. Rather large miscalculation there, I'm afraid. You thought it was funny the first time. I thought it was funny when I thought this character was something Hedwig made up. Now that I know you actually went and dressed up like a nasty devil and scared her, and now all of us, witless, I'm reevaluating. So was Hedwig right when she told us? Did you really kill a goat? Eustace looked at me with a cold but clearly wounded expression. No. I think that perhaps Hedwig was so overcome with shock that she saw something in the shadows that wasn't there. Entirely reasonable, I should think. You were waving a flaming sword around, according to her description. That's a point. No fire this time. Or did Hedwig imagine that too? It seemed like a waste of oil. Not to mention, it's not good for the blade. Eustace beckoned for Adela to pass her the sword back. Adela's eyes narrowed. Absolutely not. Come on. I'm the sacrist. I've got to put it back. I do not think this is behavior befitting a sacrist. And disrespecting Sister Catherine's sword in this mat. Oh my god. It was the sword. Fuck. Shameful. We should tell the superior about this. You're overreacting slightly, I think. I disagree. Catherine's sword. I was so angry that I couldn't help but blurt this out as soon as it entered into my head. Did you not know this, Sister Hedwig? I scrambled to say something that would allay any suspicions. I spoke to Angela about what happened to Catherine, and she said it was the delivery man's sword. Angela thinks she's smarter than she is. Although why she would try to deceive you about that, I have no idea. So it really was Catherine's. But it certainly wasn't the delivery boy's. Do you know how much a sword costs? Especially one of that size. So how on earth was it Catherine's? It wasn't actually hers. She just liked to borrow it from the library. And you let her? I refuse to be questioned on this by somebody who barely knows me and who didn't know her at all. You are not in a position to act superior to anyone right now, Eustace. I don't know if we need to tell Soup. But that was not on, Eustace. Margaret, I know for a fact you and Catherine used to plan and execute far worse. I'm innocent. Catherine II. I think you should calm down, Eustace. I'm sorry we didn't find this prank particularly amusing. You threatened to kill poor Hedwig! I pretended to threaten her. Oh, well, in that case. Remind me, Margaret, what happened to the superior before ours? That was nothing like this, and you know it. Yet it was significantly worse. What are you talking about? Nothing. It was before your time. What the hell did they do to the previous Mother Superior? Did they, like, fucking kill her by accident in a prank? Or, like, shock her into, you know, old lady disease? You know how, like, in the olden times, you could shock a woman enough that she would just become bedridden? And before Eustace's, for that matter. So she should keep it out of her mouth. I heard enough about it. Straight from you and her. Stop making this about me. This is about you and your stupid ghost costume. Waving a sword in Hedwig's face. Honestly, how could you? It beggars belief that you'd attempt to flip this around on anyone else. Eustace looked around the room, but nobody offered any support. She was breathing heavily and looked as if she was about to cry. Once she was certain nobody was coming to her rescue, she focused on me. Hedwig. Oh my god, did Hedwig just slap her? I had struck her so hard my hand stung. Eustace's face was redder than the evening's wine. I realized that I must have scraped her face with my fingernails during the swipe, as there was just a touch of blood on her cheek. I half expected her eyes to start welling up with tears, but she just stood there. Perhaps she was dumbstruck. You were cruel, Eustace. Cruel and nasty. Did you enjoy making me feel small? Hedwig... I instinctively raised my hand again, although this time I was held back by several of the women behind me. Easy now. Have you ever said anything earnest to me, Eustace? Have you ever spoken to me truthfully, even once? Of course I have. But how could I trust you? Ever? I tried futilely to lunge at her again, but I was not strong enough to overcome the several people gripping my arm and shoulders. I don't know. I don't like you. That is... fair. Let's all calm down now, yeah? Yes, I think that's quite enough theater for the night. What is going on? Tonight's outing to the Misericorde has concluded, I think. Oh. Blame Eustace, I suppose. This is getting quite late, though. I'll be getting on. She slunk away from the group and out the door too quickly for me to object. The other women who had been holding on to me finally loosened their grips. All except for Moira, who patted me on the shoulder consolingly. Let's get you to bed, Hedwig. I nodded, but kept looking at Eustace. She looked pathetic. She was not openly crying, but I swear I heard a sniffle as Moira piloted me past her and out of the room. The others were following suit, muttering to each other in quiet conversation. Once we were out in the hallway, I realized just how stuffy and airless the Misericorde had felt. I took in a breath of fresh air and felt a slight pang of regret, enough to make me turn around to see if Eustace had left the room. Moira tugged me away quickly. I think that's enough for tonight, eh? I don't know. I think I should apologize. Well, you can do that tomorrow. Right now, I think what you need is some rest. I hit her quite hard. As well you should have, if I'm being frank. What a horrible practical joke. There was a slight twinkling sound as her foot collided with the empty tincture bottle I had left on my bed earlier. Whoops, sorry. Oh, no, it's my fault. I must have fallen off the bed. What was in it? She shut the door behind her and set me down on the bed just like she had on my first day out of my cell. Nothing. Not anymore, at least. Something Darcy gave me earlier. Yeah, best to be careful drinking anything Darcy gives you. It was actually rather helpful. She said it would give me confidence. Well, we'll have to tell her it was a rousing success, won't we? We both chuckled. What a day, Yes, quite a day. I smiled weakly at her for a moment, but I couldn't maintain the charade for too long. I burst into tears. Moira made a sympathetic cooing sound and put her hands on my shoulders. I shrugged them off quickly. I had quite enough of people attempting to restrain me for one night. Instead, she offered the front of her robe for me to dry my eyes on, which I did accept. There. I think this was all a bit much for you in one go, perhaps. Is it always like this? It feels like the whole abbey just fell apart, and it's my fault. Well, this definitely wasn't one of our better nights, but no, I can think of worse. Really? Don't forget someone died not too long ago. I think that might still top you having a little bit too much to drink, don't you? Oh, silly me. But even so, we have some colourful personalities here. It's not the first time we've had a minor clash. But I hit her. I had no idea I was even capable. I'm a freak. I should never have left my cell. Oh, she's stronger than she looks, you know. She's clapped Flora on the cheek more times than I can count. I'm pretty sure she'll smack a dealer one of these days if they keep arguing about the sherry. Well, I think Darcy's gotten into it with Katherine before. Although that might have just been under the influence of a particularly bad mushroom. That doesn't count. The details are different, but I'll be honest with you. I think people mostly remember the boiling over, not what was in the pot. Still, would you believe me that I've gotten slapped a few times? What? Why? She chuckled again and leant down to give me a kiss on the forehead. So condescending. No, I'm happy to gossip, but I think I have the right to withhold and gossip about myself. Wouldn't you agree? I suppose that makes sense. You can ask Eustace about it, I'm sure. Maybe that's a good way to start mending that bridge. Or you could ask Angela. I'm sure she'd have a particularly dramatic version to share. I groaned into her robe. Oh dear, I have to work with Eustace. We all have to work together, Edwig. How? In the same room. It's going to be horrible. You'll find a way. We always do. She gently tugged her robe away from me. There was an embarrassingly soggy patch on her chest. I'll see you at service tomorrow. Oh, of course. Good. Now get some sleep. You'll feel better in the morning. I promise. She made to leave. When she opened the door, I could hear Angela commenting to her from the landing. It would seem I left just before things got interesting. Yes, well, as always, next time. She shut the door behind her, and the conversation became too muffled to focus on. I collapsed onto the bed, spread-eagled, and then half-heartedly attempted to get into it properly. I stared at the ceiling, unsure what to do. It was late, but there was absolutely no chance I was going to fall asleep anytime soon. Something felt wrong inside of me. Despite Moira's assurances that things would continue as usual, I felt as if I had just stepped across the threshold equally as dramatic as the one I had crossed when I left my cell. Eustace's cruel jokes had thrown so much of the past few weeks into question, but nonetheless, I felt a bit ill. I rubbed the hand that I had struck her cheek with. I could still feel the sting lingering. She had terrified me. Not just me, but the entire room full of women. And for what? All in the service of some hazing ritual? The Superior had warned everyone about that. I realized that she would have only mentioned it if it had been a problem prior. Perhaps this was typical. Perhaps I was unaccustomed to the space I now occupied, unprepared for how adversarial and mean-spirited it was. As it was, there was no denying that over the past few weeks, and tonight especially, I had observed a community on the rocks. It wasn't just Eustace and I. It was Angela and Katherine, Adela and Charity, Flora and, well, everyone else. Those weren't the only conflicts either. All in all, it seemed like this place was a kind of nexus of misery and resentment. I was restless. Sighing deeply, I got up off the bed and quietly crept to my door. There was no conversation emanating from any of the rooms or the hallway. It seemed as if everyone had succeeded where I could not. I did my best to stay silent as I collected a pricket from the mantel and lit the candle in the fireplace and headed out for a stroll. It was quite cold out now. I thanked God for my cozy robes. The thick woolen fabric did an admirable job of protecting me from the elements, and I could ball up the extra fabric with my oversized sleeves to keep my free hand warm. I wandered back and forth across the landing a few times. I was a lot more confident in spending time alone outside now that Eustace had ousted herself as my mysterious stalker. I descended the stairs nearest the dorms and did a few slow laps of the cloister, deep in thought. Should I tell the superior? I felt uneasy about this. Margaret and a few others seemed to balk at Adela's suggestion of involving her. Then again, I would have to report to her sooner or later, and it would be hard to pretend nothing had happened, especially since I had not even gotten the answer from Katherine that I had promised to make my priority. Oh well, it had not been for lack of trying. Perhaps I could corner Katherine before service tomorrow. She hadn't seemed unwilling to talk at all, just unwilling to do it in the company of others, which I could understand. On the other hand, what if Eustace had handed me the evidence I needed anyway? Who else could have beheaded someone but the woman with access to that sword? How cavalier Eustace had been with her threats, too. Cease your meddling! In retrospect, Eustace's attempt at a booming, authoritative voice had been a little unconvincing. I'd been swept up in the moment, I guess. That's a relief for me with my voice, because I know I can't do booming authoritative either. Nonetheless, her threats seemed quite targeted. It was not the first time Eustace had advised me to keep my nose clean. I took a turn out of the cloister and into the paths that between mostly unused rooms and buildings the superior led me past on the way to the hospitalum. The brisk night air was doing something helpful for my thoughts, at the very least, but I wanted to stretch my legs further. Eustace controlled access to the sword, there was no doubt about that. Thinking more on the situation, was there really any other reason needed to finger her as the perpetrator? Katherine had been beheaded, and the wretched tool had been left in the cloister as an ill omen, but it was clean. There was no blood on it. I had no idea why Eustace would want to kill Katherine, but was that my responsibility to find out? I had been charged with finding Katherine's killer. Katherine had been killed with a sword. The one sword in the Abbey resided under lock and key, a key that Eustace controlled. What else was there to it? But Katherine took the sword out of the sacristy, like on the regular, they said. So she could have just had it checked out on that night. And like, I still believe that she took it out to plant as a fake murder weapon when she faked her death. But like, they could assume that like she had it checked out, and then the murderer could have attacked her with it because she just had it on her person. So like, I feel like the next step for Hedvig as investigator is to figure out whether the sword was checked out at the time of the murder or if it was still supposed to be in the library. As I wandered the path towards the outer wall of the Abbey, I became surer and surer of this line of reasoning. Why did the why matter? I was not here to judge. I thought about Flora. If Eustace was found guilty and handed over to the diocese, maybe the clouds surrounding the Abbey would part. Maybe she could be happy. I thought about Katherine. Something was weighing on her, and it was clearly something to do with the night of Catherine II's death. Had she seen something? Was she simply too afraid to speak? She certainly left in a hurry after Eustace's little stunt backfired. This, too, might be resolved if Eustace was found to be the guilty one. I reached the end of the courtyard and stood in the shadow of the crumbling outer wall. Goodness, they really should have built a gate here. Anyone could come into the Abbey from this direction if they braved the hill and the cold. It could have been anyone. And yet, the longer I turned things over in my head, the more I thought about the ghost stories people had told earlier in the evening. That cloud of negativity. Maybe it really was a haunting. Eustace had been dressing up as my ghost, but what about Flora's? Adela's? Was every ghost story here a tale born of Eustace's mean streak? I found that hard to believe, as much as that astounded me. Demons and devils. They infested this place. I saw a light in the distance. My heart dropped out of my chest. I scrambled ahead through the open archway in the wall, desperate to see what was out there on the moorland this late at night. The rolling hillocks made it difficult to get a good look from my position. I did my best to quietly hop and sprint forward, keeping myself as a high position in the rolling field as I could. The light ahead of me kept dipping out of sight. Finally, I got close enough to get a good look at their shape. They were taking the same route that Superior and I had travelled the other day. I froze. The traveller had not seen me, but they were liable to at any moment if they happened to look over their shoulder. Looking back on it, the intelligent choice would have been for me to turn back to the Abbey right away, wake the Superior up, and catch Eustace, I was assuming, in whatever duplicitous act she was up to. But perhaps through a mixture of wine and whatever Darcy had given me earlier in the evening, I was not acting intelligently. I told you got to worry about those alcohol interactions. I threw up on a train after a very fancy dinner. You're going to get murdered on the moors. Not to mention the sheer rush of shock I was feeling at that moment. I followed her. It was not easy, it was quite cold out, and even under the moonlight I had to rely on my candle to watch my footing. A strong gust of wind could have extinguished my light, but mercifully it survived the whole trip. That feels a bit miraculous. What would I have done if she'd turned around? I can't say for sure. I presume I would have blown the candle out and run straight backwards. After an agonizingly long walk, we arrived at the hospitalum. My heart was pounding out of my chest. The figure ahead of me broke left, around the back door that the Superior and I had taken down to the lower level of the building. My first impulse was to watch through the small window I had seen at the top of the dungeon, but I realized how obvious that would be if either of them happened to look up. I blew out my candle, just to make sure I was invisible. Another part of me wanted to simply tackle the mystery nun on the stairs before she could get to James, and bound to know what she was doing out here. But I reasoned it would likely be more useful to hear what they were going to talk about. Were threats going to be made? Would I learn some earth-shattering secret that would illuminate the conspiracy I was working to unfold? I'm so, invested in this. What's happening? I stood close as close to the window as I could, while still feeling reasonably out of sight. This, frustratingly, made it impossible to see what was happening. I was hopeful that the sound would carry, but they spoke quietly. The echo made it impossible to discern anything meaningful. I could at least make out that the tenor of the conversation was calm. I'd been worried that I was about to overhear an intense argument or violent threats, but whatever James and his mystery liaison had to say to each other, it never rose above a dull whisper. I wanted, very badly, to take a peek through the little window. But the moonlight was such that anyone passing in front of the opening would be extremely obvious. The conversation grew quieter, and I became worried that they had grown suspicious. Eventually, I made out a sigh of resignation. I suddenly realized that if the conversation came to a close while I was still here, I would have to follow the person I was spying back to the Abbey, as I was now without a candlelight. I did not want to further risk being caught following this person. I crept away from the wall I had been pressed up against, and I began to sprint back towards the Abbey, just gunning it in our full heavy woolen robes and habit, in the moonlight on the damp, messy hills, the turf throwing everywhere, stumbling. It's very dark outside. There was enough moonlight to see the general shape of the ground in front of me, but little else. I ran as I'd never run in my entire life. I was out of breath quickly, and soon after that, I could feel a sharp, pinching pain in my side. I stopped every now and then to collect myself, making sure not to change direction on accident. I didn't even know if I had started running in the right direction. I just knew that further adjustment would surely result in disaster. I had never run like this before. It was making me aware of muscles and bones that I had never realized existed. My inner thighs felt stretched and ready to snap. Oh yeah, I have really inflexible, stiff, whatever that tendon is called in your thighs, and it's people who can do splits may as well be wizards to me. It just feels fucking impossible. My chest grew tight. Whenever I pushed myself particularly hard, that pinching pain returned harder, and with a pulsing rhythm I could feel under my skin, as if lute strings inside me were being plucked. Bodies are truly disgusting things, aren't they? There's a lot of shit going on inside you. Don't think too hard about it. Miraculously, it seemed I had aimed true. I could see the Abbey walls ahead of me. I had to veer a little somewhere along the route, but not as significantly as I'd feared. I slowed my sprint to a canter, and then eventually to a limping walk. I made it through the archway I'd walked through earlier, and then my knees gave out. I fell to the ground, completely exhausted. I rolled onto the grass next to me and attempted to get to my feet, but I was spent. I retched a few times. Groaning, I made it up to all fours. You ever done that? You ever run so hard or exercise too much and thrown up? Near my house, the bus stop is up a hill, And if I'm running late to the bus, I have to run up the hill. And if I have to run up the hill and I haven't eaten breakfast that morning, it's not a fun time when I get to the top of that fucking hill, and sometimes I miss the damn bus anyway. Black bile spilled out of my mouth into the grass with another heave. I realized that it was mostly wine I was expelling. Sore and sticky. Sickly. I was truly pathetic to behold. Probably also sticky. I could feel my body giving up. I struggled to remain awake. I couldn't just pass out here, but... She did. Huh? Hedwig? What are you doing out here? I scrambled to my feet. Katherine was standing in the archway, looking concerned. Oh, I couldn't sleep, so I went for a walk around the abbey. Must have pushed myself too hard. Goodness. Do you need any help? She was smiling, but she looked rather peculiar. She held her hands behind her back, a rigid pose I had never seen her stand in before. No, thank you, though. I see. Well, have a good night. Katherine, what were you doing? Same thing you were, of course. I never sleep after a night of Misericorde drama. What did you and James talk about? I felt a surge of bravery. We were alone, and it was the middle of the night. She could not weasel out of this one. I don't know what you're talking about. Katherine, please. She sighed deeply. Listen, you must promise not to tell anyone about this. How do you know about James, anyway? I asked the superior to introduce us. Since I was replacing Katherine II as chronicler, I wanted to know what I was stepping into. He told me he didn't kill her. And then he told me you could vouch for him. Ah. He stood in silence for a moment. And you believe him? I do. And what do you stand to gain from helping him, exactly? It just seems like the right thing to do. I wouldn't want to occupy a position I had lingering questions about. Katherine nodded, looking less confident than I'd ever seen her. Very well. I can certainly tell you that he did not kill her. Really? How? He mentioned something about his tunic. What did he tell you? That was more or less the whole of it. I was trying to ask you for details in the Misericorde. Well, I know he was not wearing a tunic when Katherine II was found. How? Because he was with me. And he didn't slip away? No, I'm quite sure of that. Where were you? In my dormitory room. Really? Why? Hedwig, come on, put two and two together. They're having sex. You know what that is, right? Hedwig, this is humiliating enough. Please don't make me say it. What? I'm confused. Oh my goodness. This would be precious if I didn't feel so, well, mortified. All I could offer her in response was a blank expression. Hedwig, James and I we had a... Music kicked in. We had a relationship. A physical relationship. I know he did not kill Katherine because we had been fucking. Is that conclusive enough for you? There we go. Is that what you wanted to hear? Hedwig, you... My energy had finally dried up completely. My knees gave way. She's fucking collapsing out of the sheer weight of shock that people are having sex. I saw a smear of stars and then black. Hedwig! Hedwig! There she is. Thank goodness. Thank you for your assistance, Moira. What happened? I was on a walk to the privy, and I found you passed out on the path. Huh? Wait. No. Oh dear. She's still delirious. I'm beginning to worry the thin mountain air isn't very good for her. Do we have any dried fruit around here? Yes. One moment. I was lying on the floor in the superior's office. Moira and Katherine were standing above me, both looking concerned. Moira most especially. Katherine's concern, it seemed, went beyond my well-being. Do you remember what happened before you fainted, Hedwig? Katherine and I were talking, and... No, that was after I found you. Moira, I'm quite worried about this. The superior returned with a small wooden bowl. Moira plucked a small dried berry from it and crouched down to feed me. Something sweet may help, at least. So you were on a walk, Edwig? You look exhausted. Yes, I was unable to sleep. Sleep deprived, of course. That explains the confusion. Yes, yes, it would. Thank God you went to the privy when you did, Catherine. I don't particularly love that phrasing, but yes. The berry Moira had given me was definitely sweet and delicious, although I wasn't really sure how that helped. Nonetheless, I was lucid enough to understand that Catherine was signaling to me that the information that she had shared with me was not something she wanted discussed in front of Moira and the superior. Begrudgingly, I played along. Yes, I remember now. I was restless after what had happened in the Misericorde. I went for a walk to clear my head. I think I probably had too much to drink. Oh dear. What happened in the Misericorde? Nothing you need to concern yourself with, Superior. Just our typical womanly exploits. The Superior sighed, but did not push the subject. Well, thank you, Catherine, at any rate. God only knows what could have happened to poor Hedvig if you hadn't found her. And thank you, Moira, for being on hand to help her. I was on my way to the privy as well when Cotton found me. What luck! Ugh. A strange but welcome miracle. One of those shitter miracles. Well, I see no reason for you all to be crowding my floor at this late hour. Off to bed with you, all of you. Of course. I was pulled to my feet by my would-be saviors and guided towards the door. Oh, and Hedvig, if you don't mind, I'd appreciate you checking in tomorrow after service, just so I confirm that you're well. Yes, Superior. Once to the door, I was able to move with my own strength. I was sore all over, but I could walk at the very least. The three of us walked in silence through the cloister towards the stairs to the dorms. Moira let out a lilting chuckle at one point, and I could hear Catherine exhale wearily through her nose. I'd half a mind to slap Catherine the way I had Eustace. I was not sure I could ever look at her the same way again. I felt ashamed to be protecting her dirty little secret for her, and even more ashamed that I had seemingly instinctually agreed to do so. What was this place turning me into? I realized I was still carrying the pricket looped around one of my fingers. I was stretched so thin I had not thought about it the whole walk back. I placed it back on the mantel when we arrived at the dormitory. Well, good night. Good night, Moira. Yes, good night, you two. And thank you. We were all speaking in low whispers so as not to wake anyone else. Don't mention it, silly. I actually would appreciate it if you truly didn't mention it. If Flora or Margaret hears about this, I'll never hear the end of it. Mention the evidently miraculous convergence of Moira and I's bodily needs. Private humor is the lowest of the low. Naturally, Flora finds it uproarious. We split up and went to our separate doors. Catherine had to open and close hers with great care, as it was still creaking terribly. Didn't I say, back in the very, very first stream, that Catherine had a man in her room? Because, it started off with Angela harassing her about her broken door making noise, and there being a musk in the room, and it turned out that she was accusing her of having a cat, but I was like, she's got a dude in there. She had a dude in there. I was right all along. It's a game about nuns. Obviously, one of them's going to be the slutty nun. Duh. But that's nearly 2 hours we've been going today, and like I said, I'm pretty tired, and I'm going to forget to do all of my fun voices, how to do them soon. So that's going to be it for today, I reckon. Thank you all for coming out and having another fun Nunday Sunday. Hopefully next week we can keep this on the weekly schedule. Yeah, the VOD, like always, will be off my YouTube channel within a week probably. So look out for that if you only caught a little bit of this. And if you haven't seen all the previous VODs, you can go check them out on YouTube now. So thanks everyone, and I'll see you next week.